We may never have a real recession again. I know how that sounds, but hear me out. You might be living through the worst economic downturn of your lifetime right now, and no one in power is ever going to call it a recession. The grocery bill's doubled, your insurance premiums have spiked through the roof, your rent's up, maybe you're working a second job just to put food on the table. But the media says the economy is booming because the unemployment rate is 4.2%. Now, how does that make sense? I'm Ramin, this is Real Talk, and I'm going to show you how the economy broke and why they'll never admit it. Now, let me paint the picture. You're standing in line at Costco. Your cart's only half full. You got eggs, some paper towels, a few things for the kids' lunches, and the total comes out to $412. You just shake your head, you drive home, and you pass your favorite pizza shop. It's dark, it's closed. For lease sign in the window. That place has been there for 20 years. It's not inflation. That is not a soft landing. That is a real recession happening in real time to real people. But the headlines, the stock market, they're telling a totally different story. So let's talk about what just came out in the latest BLS data last week. Over the past few months, they've revised down more than 600,000 jobs from prior reports. You heard that right. Over 500,000 jobs just disappeared from the official count. Quietly. No press conference, no breaking news banner on CNBC. March started at 303,000 jobs added. Revised to 165,000. In April, 175,000 turned into 108,000. It's not a typo. That's a manipulated scoreboard. They dropped the bad news months later when nobody's watching. But the original number, that's what drives the headlines, the stock market, and the White House talking points. Now, meanwhile, the household survey, which actually asks real people if they're working, well, that shows job losses repeatedly. But they're not going to use that data. Now, here's how they fudge it. When someone gives up looking for work, boom, they disappear. They're not unemployed. They vanished from the data. It's like measuring hunger by only counting people who are actively chewing, and the Fed, well, they say they're data dependent, but which data are they looking at? The fantasy numbers they release first, or the revised reality that comes out months later. The NBER, the group that declares a recession, they're always late. They called the 2020 recession a full year after it was over. So while you're struggling to make rent, well, they're debating semantics. Let's talk about the stock market. Just because the S&P is up doesn't mean the economy is fine. Wall Street trades on narratives, not reality. Saudi Arabia pledges to invest $500 billion in the U.S. Japan floats a $300 billion trade deal. The Fed hints at rate cuts. Boom, boom, boom. Markets rally. But nobody's trading on Johnny losing his job at the pizza place, or you picking up an extra shift at Starbucks just to keep the lights on. That's not a story. That's your life. And your life doesn't get airtime unless it fits the narrative. So let me ask you something straight. Are you in a recession right now? Forget what the government says. Forget what Wall Street says. Don't look at CNBC. What does your life tell you? Are you working harder than ever, but your paycheck covers less? Are you skipping dinners out? Are you cutting subscriptions? Stretching every single dollar. Your cousin can't buy a house even with a good job. Your parents are dipping into savings to help with groceries. That is a recession. And if the government won't call it that, then maybe we have entered a whole new phase, a post-truth economy, an economy where headlines lie and reality, well, gets filtered out. So let's take a step back and talk about what this actually looks like for real people and not economists. Not Fed officials in DC, but people like you and me. I talked to a client last week. He works two jobs. One is a high school teacher, and the other is a DoorDash driver, just to cover the rising insurance, rising groceries, and her son's daycare. She told me, Ramin, I don't know how much longer I can do this. It's not a data point. It's not a trend line. That is a cry for help. Another friend works in tech, got laid off from a well-paying job in February. Still hasn't found a new one. What does he do now? Well, he drives Uber from 6 p.m. to midnight. His wife, she picked up a part-time gig at Starbucks just to keep the health insurance. This is what a recession feels like. And no revision, no unemployment spin, no Wall Street rally is going to erase that. So let's rewind the clock back to 2008, the Great Recession. Back then, the pain was obvious. Foreclosures were everywhere. Bank collapses, stock market in free fall. Today, well, we're in the same pain. It just looks different. And instead of crashing prices, We've got unaffordable prices. Instead of banks failing, we've got you failing to keep up. Instead of mass layoffs, well, we got quiet quitting, quiet firings, gig work, and no benefits. But the hurt is just as real and maybe even worse because they're hiding it under a sheet of normal. And housing, well, back then, home prices were inflated by bad loans. Today, they're inflated by bad policy. The Fed trying to cover its tracks. You want data? I'll give you some. Credit card delinquencies are up 50% from last year. Think about that. Savings rates are one of the lowest levels in modern history. Student loan repayments are back, and defaults are spiking. Consumer sentiment, how people feel about the economy, well, it's tanking. But all you'll hear on the news is stocks are up. S&P closes green. Let me ask you something. If your kid is failing math, report card, but the school keeps printing A's on a report card, are they learning or are they being lied to? Same thing here. The government, the media, Wall Street, they're all handing out fake A's while the country fails to meet basic living standards. So how do you navigate this as a home buyer? What do you do when you know the truth, but the system keeps lying? This is where strategy matters. You can't just say, I'll wait until rates drop, because when they do, demand's going to explode. That $800,000 home you could qualify for now is going to be $950,000 when the next rate cut hits. Right now, you have leverage. Sellers are nervous. Rates are keeping some competition out. You can negotiate credits. You can use temporary buy downs. You can structure your offer with long-term strategy in mind. But that window is shrinking because the Fed will be forced to act. And when they do, this market is going to light up fast. I do this because I've seen what happens when people wait for the headlines. In 2020, I had buyers who hesitated. Rates dropped, prices jumped. They called me back 6 months later and said, I should have listened. And by then, they couldn't afford the same damn house. And it's happening again. I can feel it. People are freaking scared, rightfully so, but waiting for someone on TV to say, now's the time, it's a trap. By the time they say it, it's already too late. If your gut is telling you this isn't sustainable, you're right. If your gut is saying this is a buying window, you're right. Let's look at your numbers. Let's look at your income. Let's look at your options, because there are options, more than you actually think. Now, let me give you one more picture. You're a parent. You're doing everything right. You're working full time, maybe even overtime. Your partner's working too, and somehow every month feels a little bit tighter. The kids need shoes. Groceries cost more. After school programs just raised their fees again. You don't splurge. You don't travel. You haven't upgraded your car in 5 years. And still, the balance in your checking account feels like it's always one step behind your bills. Then you turn on the news and they say, consumer spending is strong. Americans are confident. The labor market is robust. And you wonder, what country are they talking about? Because it sure doesn't feel like that in your kitchen at 10 p.m. when you're trying to figure out how to cover everything this month. That's the emotional cost of the post-truth economy. It's not just money. It's stress, anxiety, broken sleep, and broken families. It's pressure that builds in silence until people crack. The hardest part, when your reality doesn't match what the experts say, you start doubting yourself. You think, maybe it's you. Maybe I just need to budget better. Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe everyone else is doing fine and I'm the one falling behind. But you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not alone. You're living in a country that's in denial. And you're just brave enough to see it for what it is. So here's the question I'll leave you with. What happens to a country that experiences a recession but never recognizes it? What happens to a generation that struggles silently, invisibly, while the headlines tell them they're thriving? We've seen this story before in other countries. It never ends well, but you can write a different ending for yourself, for your family, for your future. You don't need permission from the Fed. You don't need an announcement from the NBER. You don't need CNBC analysts to tell you what you already know. You just need a plan and the courage to act on it. So let me ask you a question, and really sit with this. If you walked into Whole Foods and there was a line at the door just to get milk and eggs, if Safeway had ration limits on baby formula again, if Raley's in your hometown had empty shelves in the bread aisle and a limit of 2 per customer signed taped to the fridge section, would you believe the unemployment rate is still 4.2%? Because that's where we're heading. Quiet desperation in plain sight, and they still say everything's fine because the stock market's up. And the headline says, we added 110,000 jobs last month. That's the game. They're hiding the recession in the margins of spreadsheets. They fired the woman who published the data. They'll show you Powell's face, Trump speeches, a graph with pretty arrows, but they won't show you the man with 2 jobs who still can't afford to put gas in the car. We may not see soup lines in a traditional sense, but we are seeing checkout lines full of anxiety. And they still say, oh, it's not a recession. Look at the data. So let me leave you with this. The 2025 recession isn't coming. It's here. You feel it at the pump. You feel it in your mortgage statement. You feel it when your kid's school asks for another donation because they're cutting programs again. Don't wait for CNBC to catch up. Don't wait for Powell to say the magic word. Move smart. Move now. If you want to talk strategy, buying, refinancing, cashing out, even just planning, reach out. Links are in the description because the system might be rigged, but your future doesn't have to be. This is real talk, and if this struck a chord, smash that like button if you want more truth in your feed. And remember, just because they won't call it a recession doesn't mean your wallet can't feel it. See you in the next one.